The Enneagram is a map of the human personality. It's a tool for navigating relationships. It creates language for what motivates us and helps us look at the way that we look at everything else. Most importantly, the Enneagram's a mirror because sometimes you need help seeing yourself. My name's Jeff Cook. I'm a longtime professor of philosophy in Greeley, Colorado. With me is TJ Wilson, coffee guru, lover of theology, and Enneagram ninja.
Hello.
TJ.
Hey.
I don't recall the last time I got nervous starting one of our podcasts. But
Sure,
my hands are a little sweaty. And the reason is because we actually have people who know what they're talking about on with us today. And so,
And like several of them, they outnumber us today.
That's right. So I'm a little anxious. So no disparagement, I suppose, about our past guests. You guys are great as well. But these folks intimidate. So we have a panel today of fantastic therapists, and we're going to be talking about how Enneagram overlaps with therapy in professional settings, and just talking all around how these two spheres overlap, interconnect, what the positives are. And I'm super excited for our discussion. So to get us moving, I would love to just let everybody introduce themselves. I'm going to start with my friend, the great Lindsay Taylor, who's out of North Alabama. And Lindsay, tell us your number and what you do professionally.
Hey, so yeah, I'm Lindsay Taylor, and yes, I'm a fellow Enneagram 1 with Jeff, and practice in North Alabama in a private practice, but technically a nonprofit. Marriage and family therapist, do a lot of work with couples mostly. Also do a lot of work with spiritual growth, do a lot of work with churches and their staff, trying to help them be as healthy as they can as ministers. Serving, we kind of serve those who serve, so that's one of the populations we do a lot of work with, but also first responders, military, so those are kind of my areas.
Wonderful. Well, welcome. Next, Michael, why don't you introduce yourself, boss?
So my name is Michael Shahan. I live in the Kansas City area. Yeah, I'm a marriage and family therapist. I've been doing it for, 8 to 9 years now. I've been using the Enneagram almost the whole time. Over my time of using the Enneagram and doing therapy, I've actually created a course for therapists to teach them how to use the Enneagram and what the Enneagram is, which I love doing. I work with all sorts of populations as well. I work with couples and families even. That's not all I work with as a marriage and family therapist. I see plenty of individuals, but I work with people with big histories of traumas or more recent traumas. Yeah, love what I do. Been doing it for a long time, and I love incorporating the Enneagram into it. And I'm a 6. Enneagram 6. Thought I was a 9 for about 7 years until last spring 2024, and then I realized in a life-shattering moment that I'm actually a 6, not a 9. I'm not nearly as chill as I thought I was.
Just as a special note, 2 things. One, we will highlight the excellent work that Michael does working with therapists and training them in terms of Enneagram in ways that you can get connected to the stellar stuff that he does. And secondarily, it's always heartening to me to hear how many folks reference your story as kind of prescriptive in terms of sometimes it takes a while to find yourself in this system, and it's spun as a positive. Like even professional therapists, sometimes it takes a bit to get in. So anyway, your story is very valuable to a lot of people.
Thank you for saying that.
Heidi.
Hi, everyone. I'm Heidi. I live in small town Colorado, and I am a type 4 who just became a therapist. I graduated with my master's in counseling a year ago and went into community mental health, and quickly became Heidi the Therapist in a small town, running into all of my clients everywhere. And as an image type, I wanted to manage my image, and so I'm currently transitioning into remote work.
What does that look like?
So basically, I'll be working entirely from home, but with people who live all around Colorado. So I think it's going to be probably a fairly similar demographic, just not folks that I'm going to run into, at the coffee shop and everywhere else I go.
Asking for
happens all the time.
Yeah, it does.
Free therapy as they're passing.
Yeah,
Great decision.
I'm sure it happens to everyone, but as I was filling out a job application the other week, I was sitting in a coffee shop literally surrounded by 4 clients. So I don't know if it's quite that bad everywhere.
Impressive.
Wow.
I don't think it's that bad everywhere. No, I think you're right.
That's a good place to start. I would never have thought about this. Like, I actually am longing, addict that I am. I don't know if TJ has this experience. I'm longing for people to talk to me about Enneagram. Nobody talks to me about Enneagram. It's like, I'm informed. I would love to hear about your stuff. Nope. Doesn't happen. Well, welcome all. TJ, you got any setup before we jump in?
You know, I want to try and manufacture something, but I'm pretty sure they'll all see through it. So, no, I have nothing. Let's get into it.
My favorite element of this panel is that you all represent each of the different centers, and I think that'll be incredibly helpful when just kind of structuring our conversation. Lindsay is a 1, so she's a body type, and I imagine your connection with your clients is going to have that intuitive side to it. And Heidi's a 4. This is going to be heart type, again, pushing more into elevating the feelings, and Michael's a 6, and so I imagine that heady side's going to come out. That strikes me as a real gift in terms of this conversation. And I kind of wanted to start there. Is you are experienced with Enneagram. There's using the Enneagram as a tool in therapy, but there's also your own self-understanding of how you come to the connections that you have with the people in front of you. And I was hoping that you could just speak to that element of, I'm a body type. How does this inform how I process the experience of therapy, or a head type or a heart type?
That's a great question. I think I'm learning a lot about that in the last year after recognizing I was a 6. But I mean, I can be very, I think I see a lot that's happening with my client. See a lot of patterns, see a lot of repeated things, see a lot of things connecting to other things. And that can be one of my strengths, I think, as a therapist, kind of sitting back and observing and kind of opening my awareness and taking it all in. And yeah, I can find myself getting caught up in my head if I'm not careful, kind of finding myself anxious in what should I do and what should I do? Should I do this? Should I have done that? Should I do this? And one of the bigger parts of how I help myself as a therapist and knowing the Enneagram is recognizing that when I get to that place, it means usually that I'm really uncomfortable, or there's some sort of emotion that I don't want to feel, whether in my client or in me. And so learning to take a deep breath and just remind myself the mantra, be here now. And I have what it takes. I don't need anything else. I don't need to prep anything that I didn't prep. Just kind of centering and grounding myself when I do get caught up in my head. And so I can get caught up in my head sometimes, but oftentimes my head can be really, really, really helpful in noticing patterns and understanding people in a way that they've never been seen or understood before, which I think can be really, really healing.
Do you find yourself self-aware then when you're in conversation?
With clients?
Yeah.
Yes. I think the more self-aware I am in a session with a client, the better work I can do with a client, for sure.
That's interesting.
I'm trying to be, at least. Attempting to be.
You know, for me, I think I told y'all this last time I was on the podcast. The body center, the experiential center, whatever you want to call it, is the hardest for me to explain because it's just kind of an is thing. So I think I have a lot of that in session with folks. There's just this kind of knowing of I'm going off of a very, I'm also as a 1 very present focused. And so I'm going off of a very just general sense of what I am sensing right now. Like, this is what I just have this knowing sense of this is kind of what's happening for them. This is what's happening for me. This is what's going on in the room. And I think as far as like what Michael was saying about what he has to center himself in, I think I have to be aware of myself when there's a lot of feelings in the room. I can tend to want to, if I'm not careful, do something about that. And instead of let those feelings be, because that's what I do with myself too, right? Like I try to do my way out of those feelings. So
that's a great distinction.
Whereas I'm in the room with all the feelings, and the client's looking at me like, please do something, rescue me from this feeling.
No.
And I'm not going to.
just smile and nod. Tell me more.
Exactly. And I think, being sort of more on the action body repression side of things, I really am grateful that being a therapist is teaching me how to notice that I have a body. Because I think for probably every type, if you become a therapist, there's some degree of presence that you need to cultivate that the rest of your life maybe isn't asking you for.
It's well said.
That's really well said.
I am very interested, like from the other side of the room, like the physical awareness that like it wasn't really until Enneagram that I understood my sensitivity to the sort of ineffable energy of another person, and like I personally can't do remote therapy because I need to have that connection that I can't explain. And I'm just curious, like as professional counselors, how is that something that comes in when you're thinking about remote work versus in-person work? Like for all of you, because all of you are going to have a different sensitivity to that.
I'm with you, TJ. COVID was, I did a lot less counseling during COVID because it's almost overstimulating for me or something to try to do a lot of counseling via video. I will do it for people in, rare circumstances, or if I have somebody grandfathered in that's what they've always done and that's the only way they can do it. But otherwise, I would rather not, because I definitely sense the energy, and I need that in the room with me to feel like I'm operating at my optimal level.
Yeah.
That's funny. I don't feel like I need that at all. During COVID, all of us therapists got like a crash course in doing therapy virtually. It was wild. And like I probably saw more clients that spring and summer than I ever had and have. Mostly because everybody needed it at that point in time. But I don't I get that. I understand that sentiment in people, but I really doesn't matter to me. I don't really care that much. And that's, partially why I also do coaching. I do therapy in my office and some people virtually locally, but I also do coaching even worldwide. And that hasn't to me felt like a big barrier at all in my own experience. That makes sense. That's interesting.
I'm very nervous about starting to work remote because I feel like most of my favorite moments that have happened so far have been related to being in the same room together, something kind of ineffable. But at the same time, I kind of wonder if working remote might be worse for me and better for clients. Because as a type 4, I know that things, like I can let things get very intense, and having sort of the barrier of a screen might actually provide sort of the protection that some people might want from a type 4.
Protection people might want from before.
You're a dragon, Heidi. That's interesting. To transition on that point, there's you understanding your own Enneagram type as you come to the art and practice. How is it just basically your Enneagram informed, enthusiastic? Where do you experience the overlap between doing traditional therapy and incorporating the tool, as it were?
I tend to say that it's not really like a tool for me. It's more of a lens. It doesn't replace any sort of modalities I've learned and that I use from school and trainings or whatever. And I still do EMDR and internal family systems and all this other stuff. But I use the Enneagram as a lens. And I think more than anything, it really helps me like guide my curiosity toward clients. Like, where are we going? Where do we need to start digging? Where do we need to start asking? If you're this number, probably here. So let's go here and tell me what it's like to be this number. So yeah, more than anything, it's sort of a tool and it's not a tool. It's a lens on how I make sense of people and sort of where to go and where my curiosity needs to be led. Kind of is how I tend to talk about it.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I sometimes, with some clients, we never even really talk about it as an actual tool, but I am using it in the back of my head as I talk to them, because I can almost, again, with that energy in the room, I can kind of know, or at least have it narrowed down to probably 2 types after talking with them for an hour. Just listening to those motivations, and I I can't take that lens off when I'm practicing. I can't take the Enneagram lens off. So it's there. It's being used whether they are talking about it, know about it or not. And then, it just helps so much with specific type of therapy I do with couples is called emotionally focused therapy. And we talk about kind of the dance that happens, the negative cycle that happens between people within a relationship. And it just gives such a clearer picture and a more specific picture of what's going on for folks in that dance when we overlay that Enneagram lens with it.
Yes.
The thing I'm hearing, and this is very different from how I end up doing most of my work. Most of my work is description and then prescription, and I seldom get a chance to do the guided question side of things, which I assume, like most great therapists, are going to actually push much more into that element of questions that bring forth something. And so I had not thought about that in terms of like Enneagram on that front. Can't be content. You're not like informing somebody this is who you are or something like that. Instead, I love that it's a lens then for pulling other things out. Is that right?
Yeah, I think there also is room for me, at least, for a question like, hey, the Enneagram says this, like, do you notice this specifically? Like, even speaking directly to certain things and almost some like education sometimes with clients.
Oh, okay.
That can help I think that can be helpful a lot of times in really normalizing. Like, so I think you're a 6 and 6s normally do this. They're like, oh my God, like, really? Like, oh, I thought I was crazy, but that's just a 6 thing, like, as an example. And it can be so normalizing for people to even learn that there's a chunk of other people who think and process very similarly to you.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's a normalization piece for people. And I think Enneagram has been a huge resource for that. I mean, y'all's podcasts, along with other people's, are ones that I send clients, hey, listen to this, see what you resonate with. Let's talk about it. I mean, we do that all the time.
All the time.
All the time.
Sending people to you all the time.
Heidi, what I hear from them, the 1 and the 6, is that they're really going to have a lot of just their stance is going to be very question oriented, question dominant. Like, I'm doing my external thinking. I imagine therapy for you is going to be different, though, in terms of hearing the feelings, the experiences of the people that you work with. Would you speak to that in terms of how Enneagram as a lens works?
Yeah, I think I don't think type 4s are actually naturally all that empathetic. I think it's kind of a byproduct of us being so internally focused. So for me, there's like a very conscious move when I am shifting the focus onto investigating someone else. Because in the room, I think one of the strengths of a 4 as a counselor is like, I know my stuff. Like, I know everything that is being triggered by a client, and I see that line. So I'm not going to like wander down the path of like intermingling my issues and their issues in the room. So I think that's a real strength of the internal focus. But that move outward, I almost feel like I need to like put on the language of that type, because a lot of my very feeling driven language, I think, can actually be very difficult for especially any of the more like feeling repressed types to cope with. Like, I noticed this about myself in sessions, that I start like every sentence with I feel like, or do you feel like, or it's like feel. And sometimes I think there's real value in trying to switch over to something that's, well, so what do you do when it's like that? Or what do you think about this thing? And making that like a very deliberate move, I think, is very helpful for me. Like Lindsay was saying, I think you start to notice, and like, I don't even worry about like typing people, which I know are not supposed to do. Like, I know you guys are like, don't type other people. I like, type everyone, just don't tell them. But
Agreed.
most of the time when I'm
not supposed to.
When I'm in a therapy setting with people, I'm really looking at it more from like, I think, triads most of the time, as opposed to like trying to pinpoint exactly what type they are. Because I think there are just these moments, especially with centers of intelligence and stance, where if you kind of can hone in on that, it gives you language for connection. And I think as a type 4, that's what I'm most preoccupied with when I'm sitting with somebody, is like, am I connecting with them relationally? Am I building rapport? Do they feel like I'm here with them?
This may just be like a taking the exact same question, just turning it slightly, but not actually asking a different question, but like thinking about the 1 and the 6 in that stance are going to be more sort of naturally curious, naturally like the questions and needing to sort of draw out some of that information. And I'm wondering if that, like, because that is not necessarily naturally part of where you are, Heidi, like that's not where you stand normally, like how much of that is learned skill, and even for you two, is that a natural place for you to be? What parts of moving away from that did you have to learn to sort of balance being in the room with someone?
Yeah, I think for me, just learning how to ask questions is a big piece of it. Realizing that I don't constantly seek information from people in the rest of my life.
Weird.
And then
Different. I mean, you know what I mean.
different, yes. Yeah, so learning how to ask questions, figuring out how to ask good questions, figuring out how to tailor those questions to the way that person is perceiving the world, I think has been a huge skill that I continue to work on. And yeah, I think my favorite advice I've gotten so far about being a therapist, and I really wish I could remember where this came from, so if this sounds familiar to anyone, point me in that direction. But it was basically, when you find yourself about to say something wise or profound, ask another question.
Sounds like a Henry Nouwen thing or something.
Maybe. Yeah, I need to track that down because I love that advice. And I think for fours, where there's this temptation to sometimes get very abstract and flowery, there's something very grounded about that.
I find that really challenging, especially as a content creator, because I'm like, my job is to say profound things, which doesn't happen very often, but this is at least the target, and I find that very challenging. I love the idea of therapy through triads, and I was hoping to just elevate that for a second, because I hadn't thought about this in terms of like suggestions that might come forth in therapy. Each of the types is going to have a repressed center, and I imagine when you're working with clients, you may become very aware of that very quickly in terms of this person just can't get into their body. This person is really having a hard time imagining, and thinking through these issues. This person just does, as Heidi said, like just their feeling repression comes out and how they're in the world. I imagine is coming to therapy and the Enneagram, that would be one of the primaries, I suppose, that would hit me as an overlap in times with people, and I was hoping you could speak to that.
Asking us to speak to like the repressed center part of us in the therapy room. Is that what you're saying?
Is it the case that I suppose I would see that as overwhelming, coming to if I were a therapist coming with the Enneagram lens? I think repressed center would just be a dominant category that I came into rooms with. I don't know if that's correct, but I don't know if you have experience on that front or if that pings for you.
I don't know if for me that's one of the first things that I notice, because again, kind of going back to what y'all were just talking about asking a lot of questions and getting a lot of information as that dependent stance. I think I'm probably listening more to their verbiage and their actual word answers of what they're saying, and so I might be hearing certain key phrases or something that I'm zeroing in more on motivation or something initially. But yeah, very quickly, I would say, once we're into some sessions and I'm seeing what the goals probably will be for therapy, like what for this person, this is what they're going to need to do. That I feel like that's where the very clear repressed center comes in of, okay, yeah, this is somebody that needs to get in their body. This is somebody that is not easily accessing logic, or this is somebody that is, like not accessing feelings easily.
So were you talking about repressed center with clients or repressed center with us as therapists, or maybe both?
With clients.
With clients, okay.
Although
okay.
I suppose you could, mostly is with clients.
Okay, okay.
But I did. I mean, we could probably talk about that because I think there's something interesting about saying this is my own repression when coming to the conversation and just being aware of it. So, and Heidi kind of mentioned that in terms of getting into her body, her intuitive center, maybe a really helpful self-conscious move. Say, I want to elevate that in my practice.
And I think that's kind of where mine was going. If I could be allowed to answer it on my end, I just, especially with what Lindsay was saying earlier about I have this intuition and I just trust it and I know, and I don't have much of that at all as a 6, or it feels like I don't. Like, the biggest work I can do as a client is, I think this is going on. Oh, but I'm probably wrong. Oh, I probably don't need to say it. Oh, I probably shouldn't. It'd be weird. You know what? I'm just going to try. Like that. Like trusting what I'm seeing, trusting my knowledge, trusting the patterns that like getting back into my thinking center versus repressing and doubting all these things that I am seeing. Because like the more I work as a therapist, the more I'm learning to trust. Like I have I ask a lot of great questions, and I know my shit, and I'm good at this, and I really can notice what's going on with people, things that they're not noticing. But not trusting that, I think, is what can keep me effective from being effective as a therapist, if that makes sense.
It does. That's excellent. Anyone else got thoughts on that?
I think maybe part of it for me is allowing myself to be a little bit more polarizing. Like, obviously, not every therapist is going to be a good fit for every client. But I think I feel this intense pressure to like develop myself in such a way that I can work with as many people, many different kinds of people as possible. And I do think that's part of being a professional. But I also think that after a certain point, like acknowledging that with my repressed center around action, there's some types, maybe some body types who are going to come into therapy and I'm not really going to be able to help them. Like there's going to be just kind of a mismatch there. And I don't want to say that that's entirely driven by Enneagram types, but I do kind of notice some patterns. So I think that like acknowledging that I can be growing in that area, but there's still probably that group of clients that I'm not going to be able to work with readily. And it's because of this, at least I think, repressed center mismatch. It's like blind spot meets blind spot.
Yeah. Can that be complementary, like as a positive, or is it the case that mismatches are unavoidable at times?
That's something I've thought a lot about, because I've wondered for a long time, like what exactly happens when a therapist and a client can't do good work together? Like what went wrong exactly? And wondering if I'm struggling with a problem with my repressed center, should I seek out a therapist who's coming from that lens? Like, is that the person who's going to be able to help me? Or is there going to be a lack of attunement or something else that I need in order to get traction there? So it's a real curiosity of mine. I don't know if the other therapists who've worked longer than I have any thoughts on that. Like what's happening when you're not connecting with someone?
So while y'all were talking, I kept thinking about how funny it is that there isn't a feeling repressed person represented here, and particularly thinking that idea of the sort of mismatch of repressed centers, like, and you use the word polarization, Heidi, or polarized, like thinking about the people who are on one end of the things that they need to do. Like I personally, my biggest struggle is not ever knowing the things. It's about applying the things, figuring out how to make the things that I need to do part of my life. And so someone on the other end who's going to help me see more clearly is not necessarily going to be that helpful to me. Somebody who's going to help me figure out how to like get moving, that's something I need. But like if the poles that are mismatched are actually opposite, it may be like it's just too far for someone who is deeply feeling repressed to be matched with someone who's in all the feels all the time. Does that make sense?
I think that makes me think of why 8s and 4s oftentimes
Yes.
don't get along or have a hard time getting along. Both reactive types and opposite end of the repression. So like, I don't know if that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
It's like a visceral
Yeah.
difficulty connecting or relating or something.
I also wanted to test out a pet theory on the group since this is my chance. But I have a curiosity about 4s and 5s have really struggling with talk therapy. So on the other side of the existential gap there, the doom spiralers in their loops of thinking and feeling, go to talk therapy where they can loop the thinking and feeling even more. And, you know, I guess I'm kind of someone who doesn't necessarily believe that therapy is necessarily what everyone needs. Some people are kind of the everybody should go to therapy type thing. And I kind of think that especially when it comes to those who are action repressed, like maybe we need, you know, either like a life coach for accountability or a personal trainer who's going to make us go to the gym. Something to escape that talking and feeling loop. Like the times when I've sought like personal counseling, I feel like it has not gone very well for me, which is very confusing to struggle in therapy and then become a therapist. But yeah, that's kind of like a theory of mine is that that thinking feeling loop can be really stubborn to break through in a talk therapy setting.
Can you both define that real quick, the thinking feeling loop?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of it is that there's this internal process happening constantly, and you can sit us in a room with someone and we'll just give you exactly what we're already doing internally. And for the therapist, that's going to feel like a lot of new feelings and new information and stuff to work with. But for the person who's generating all that, it's like a well-trodden path. Like there's nothing new actually happening, and that's the key for therapy is something different needs to happen.
Yes.
Yeah, that's their normal pattern, and it needs to be broken. Yeah.
Going back to that idea, I think it's deeply challenging of co-opting therapy. My wife, the 3, once when she goes to therapy, as predictable, wants to win.
Yes. I want to be the best at this.
When she goes into therapy. And I suppose it's easy to see there, but all of us are going to have those sorts of obstacles. And I'm going to sit with this for a while. Heidi, you need something different to happen. I go into therapy wanting to know what to do. That's the only reason I've shown up.
Yeah.
And I absolutely know that about myself, and it's why therapy doesn't really work for me. It's like
Sorry, I don't want to.
or so far. Go ahead.
I've been wanting to do like a reel on my Instagram for a while, like short clips of each Enneagram number's first session in therapy. And what I have for one is like this, a notepad and a pencil. Okay, I'm ready. Okay, tell me what to do. What am I doing? Point it out, please, so I can do this better. Okay, I'm ready to go. Like, it's just strong one energy.
Here would be something we're talking about. Like, what do you imagine therapy actually is? And I recognize that most of you probably, that's your first question. Why are you here? And it probably exposes what the presumptions are of entering the room in the first place.
Yeah, I think it's really important to address.
But that's it. Yeah, entirely right. Friends, you guys have been a delight to have. I really hope that we get to do this again. So I hope you've had as good an experience as I've had. To kind of land the plane, is there anything worth saying about your work, about what you are hoping to, like? Would you like people to connect with you? Anything worth saying as you sign off? Michael, I know you got some stuff because you do fantastic work for therapists in terms of the overlap of Enneagram and therapy. You want to pitch that?
Yeah, thanks. So just today, actually, I'm finishing up my 6-week course this spring of Enneagram for therapists, or Enneagram in practice is what it's called. I rebranded a little bit recently. Likely doing it again in the fall. So if anybody is listening to us and is a therapist and wants to dive super deep into these this content, and it's 2 hours every week, and I have you end up with like a 100-page PDF with all this information, and it's one of my favorite things I do. So also I'll be at the IEA conference this summer. I'm on the panel of therapists, and then I'm doing a late night Friday night panel as well about sexuality in the Enneagram. So I think it's going to be really cool to be there. So those are the kinds of things I do. Also, I wanted to do a retreat this fall, but couldn't get enough sign-ups. So next year, if you're listening to this and interested, and connect with me, and if you're interested in a retreat of some kind for the Enneagram meditation is what I've been doing it around, let me know. And if there's enough interest, I'd love to do another one of those. since I did one in Costa Rica a year and a half ago, and it was fantastic.
Ooh.
It was awesome.
Quick question about that. The resources that you're making available, is this specifically for therapists? Is it also for coaches?
Yes, that's why I changed it. Yes, to Enneagram in practice versus Enneagram for therapists. It's because I've had nurses, pastors, social workers, therapists, any sort of people in the healing profession, coaches as well. Thanks for asking that. That's it's all over the place. It doesn't have to just be therapists, but the final module is very therapy related. We go through polyvagal theory and EMDR and CBT and IFS and what that looks like combining with the Enneagram. So it is very there's therapist heavy at the end, but the entire thing can be for any sort of helping person.
Psychology and acronyms. That's where it's at, right there.
I said a lot, didn't I? Didn't even realize it.
I'm going to go back and look them all up and go, ooh, look at what he's doing. But I am presently ignorant. Ladies?
I'll just say, I don't shift into that self-preservation very easily, so I never want to plug. I just do my thing, and who come, I build it and they come.
And likewise, Heidi, it sounds like you're trying to get away from everybody. Yeah.
Oh yeah, trying to remain as anonymous as possible.
Please don't pursue me. Google me. Anything. Y'all are the best. Heidi, Lindsay, and Michael. It's been a absolute delight having you. Friends, if you would like to hear an extra 30 minutes of this conversation, do go to aroundthecircle.org. The entire full episode is there. So well worth checking out. If you would like to see the video of this, it's up on YouTube. I think that's what I got. TJ, you got anything else?
I got nothing, man.
CJ Wilson, he's officially awesome. I'm Jeff Cook. And who you aren't just is not interesting.